coming. And we also thank the West Hendricks School Corporation Education Foundation for hosting this event. We are very excited for Mr. Dave Hoball to discuss our finances with you and everything that makes our community how special it is. And I'll give it over to Mr. Hoball.
Applause. Am I on, Craig? Perfect. I can even hear myself. Hi, my name's David Hoball. At least that's what my mom calls me. Everybody else calls me Dave. Thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Give an opportunity to present some information. I'm going to try to keep this to an hour because I was a high school chemistry and math teacher. There's a whole bunch of numbers in here because we are going to talk about finance stuff. And so I know faces are going to start to glaze. I remember that look when I had the kids. You could tell, like at that point, like, okay, we're done. They've taken in all they can. So we're going to try to keep this to an hour just to honor your time and then hopefully make it so that you get a little something out of this. First of all, I do want to start with an introduction. I live in Pittsburgh. Recently, as of July last year, became a superintendent. I was the assistant superintendent here for the previous 8 years. I taught here at Tri-West High School for 12 years and coached. My wife teaches at North Salem, and all 3 of our children attend school here. So this is home. This means a lot to me. So I pay this same taxes everybody else pays here. So I'm in the middle of everything just like you, because this is where my wife and I decided we want to raise our family, and we love this place. So this means a lot to me to have this position and to be able to lead the school system that I value so much and I've spent now the last 20-some years in. So just to give you that piece to understand where I'm coming from and who I am. For tonight, I tried to line this up to exactly what the flyer said that went out. That basically, we'll talk about some district progress. I'm going to try to explain school from 2 different lenses, get to some key priorities, and that's more going to align with what local legislations and different things have passed lately and what those effects have looked like on us as a school corporation. And then finally, the last piece will be a shared vision, and I'm going to keep that a secret till I get there, and you'll see what that's all about. For those, I wasn't sure what the audience would look like, so for those that aren't familiar with the district, or you've moved in recently, so I just want to explain West Hendricks School Corporation. So we are comprised of 3 townships here in Hendricks County. We are the largest school corporation in Hendricks County compared to all the other Hendricks County schools because we're the only one with 3 townships. So we have Middle Township, Union Township, and Eel River. And with those, in Middle Township is Pittsburgh Elementary and Pittsburgh Primary. I'll get to a little description about them. Here in Union Township is the middle school and the high school. And then Eel River Township hosts North Salem Elementary School. So we're going to start with a little discussion about education. Normally when I feel like somebody says, hey, we're going to talk about school, everybody goes, I know all about school. I went to school. I know what school is. And when people think of school, they think of the building, the children going to school, buses. Those are the types of things people think about. And that's a huge piece of this, and that's our main driver. And as I tell my staff this year when we started the first day, there's 2 big things that drive me. One, I want every kid to know how to read. To me, that's a massive, massive piece of life. Part of this goes back to when I had some of my grad classes. I went to Purdue University, and one of our classes, we got to work at the Adult Reading Academy. And I had adults come in, and they would bring me their mail and bring me letters from their kids. And they were like, could you please read this to me? Because they never learned how to read. And they felt so embarrassed. And I said, it's fine, no problem. We'll read, no problem, we'll help you out. But you could feel sort of that self-worth that I felt like they were lacking a little bit because they never got that part. And I never want a kid to have to go through that and become an adult in that situation. So that's one we really push hard to try to make sure all of our kids can read. The second piece is I want every kid to graduate from Tri-West High School to be able to go out and do what they want to do. So whatever they're called to do, they feel that's their calling that they need to go do. Not every kid's going to college. Not every kid wants to be a mechanic. Not every kid, so all these options need to be out there so kids can achieve what they want to be. And that's the other piece that we will drive for here in this school corporation while I'm in charge, is try to make sure we put all those things in place so kids can be successful and do the things they feel like they want to do in life. North Salem Elementary School, if you're not familiar with it, they're the Blue Devils. That building is grades K through 5, and there's 223 kids in that building. So kind of like your prototypical kind of little country school. So out there in North Salem, recently remodeled, very nice school. Pittsboro Primary, so that's on the other side, over in Pittsboro. Built in 2000, I believe it was 10, I think is the right year. So Pittsboro Primary is just grades pre-K through 2. And you'll see they have 309 students just in those grades. So it's significantly larger, and that's because the bulk of our population lives in Middle Township. So the bulk of the kids go to Pittsboro because only Middle Township goes to Pittsboro. So if you're wondering about the lines, if you live in Union Township or Eel River, you go all the way to North Salem. There's only one township that attends the Pittsboro schools. Pittsboro Elementary School is right across the bus parking lot there, and that's the building that has been there for many, many, many years. That is grades 3 through 5, and in that building currently we have 340 students. Once kids get through 5th grade, they get to come to Tri-West Middle School, which is just up the hill here in Lizton. Those house grades 6 through 8, and currently we have 463 kids in there. And then to finish up the educational journey, they come down the hill here to Tri-West High School, and we're a high school, so 9 through 12. And right now we have 544 students. So a presentation I presented to the board way back last fall was on our academic achievement. And I know in this district there's been a lot of presentations on academic achievement, and we've done a great job for the last few years of really excelling in what we do. However, a lot of times it was based upon what an individual I-Learn score was in a grade or things like that. And as somebody who has children going through the system, I got a sophomore, a 6th grader, and a 5th grader, in my mind, I like to know, like, okay, my kids are going through, I want the whole journey. Like, I plan on them, they've started in K to get through 12. And what kind of education do we offer kids that are coming through our district? So I went and basically took our rankings for each different type of subject area. So on I-Learn for ELA, grades 3 through 8, we ended up 4th in the state. In math 3 through 8, 21st. Science, which is given in 4th and 6th grade, 19. Social studies is a 5th grade test. We were 17th. The SAT for our juniors, we ranked 12th in the state. And that's the combination of both, the math and the English piece. And then finally, for our I-Read kids in 2nd and 3rd grade, we finished 12th. Now, the reason I chose these are because it's really the only uniform thing I've got to compare everybody on. It's the only test that everybody takes these, so I can compare across the state. So I did that, and I averaged it out. And for 2025, Northwest Hendricks Schools ended up with this fun little score of 14.2, which overall made us the 3rd highest in the state in terms of the achievement our kids are showing on their tests. Thank you to all of the teachers. Thank you. It's you guys doing all the hard work, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you so very much for all the hard work you do. And the other piece I think it's kind of misses, thank you to all the kids. You're the ones who have to sit through these tests and take all this stuff, and it's not easy. So thank you. You guys are trying hard, working hard, and we appreciate that. The other piece I think is quite fun is when you look at these, a lot of these are very large schools, and you got little old us in here. So a lot of them have a whole lot more resources they push to things, but we've got people working hard here in our little world and doing a great job. So I think that's something to be very proud of, that the kids in this school district, I would say, you get a very good education to prepare themselves for what they want to do someday. However, this is a push that I believe in, is we focused a lot on test scores here over the years, and so I've always been one of those people, it's like, what do our kids really need? So I asked some of our board members throughout industry world, I asked some other parents, and I said, what are you looking for when you hire somebody? And the answers I got back I thought were quite interesting. 1, they show up, which you would kind of think taken for granted, but I get that. 2, they can have a conversation with somebody. 3, they stay off of their phone while they're working. And 4, they're willing to be collaborative. They want to work with other people. And I heard that across the board to everybody. And then, when I would sit at home at night and ask my children, how was school today? Rarely did I get, I learned how to differentiate equations, or I learned how to balance reactions. No, it was like, we played with so-and-so, and we did this project, and we were talking to each other, and we were doing this, and it all reverted back to a lot of those same skills. We have to make sure in our district, and I feel like in the world, but I can only help run this one, that our kids have these skills. This is important. They need to be able to work with one another. They got to be able to have conversations. We want them to have attendance. They need to come to school and realize how important those things are. And so as we told the staff, and I keep trying to tell them, like, make sure that we don't all just focus on the learning piece. That's important, but these other pieces are what's really going to carry them much further, because I know a number of people who you end up going to college, or you go get a job and you start in one field, and a few years later, you've totally changed directions and you're doing something totally different because you don't necessarily know what you want to do when you're 18 years old. But the skills of being able to communicate, being able to listen, showing up, those are things that'll take you everywhere your entire life. Those are valuable skills. So we continue to work with our teachers, and I think they're doing a good job of trying to integrate more of those, more group work and more of those communication type things. So I just want you to know that stuff is very important to me, and we will continue to push for that, because I really do believe those are the skills that translate for the rest of your life. That was the business side, or the school side. Now we get to the business side. I will tell you, a lot of information is going to come at you. This presentation will get posted on our website. So on the website, I've created a little thing that says School Finance. There's a little main tile on the corporation website. If you go there, there are different pages. Some of this I just stole off the web page that I made. They're all in there. So you can go in there and find this. I'm going to post this presentation up there, and it's being live streamed, so you can go locate it on YouTube. If you can't remember, like, what did they say about that? It's all going to be out there. So you can come back and look at it over and over again if your heart desires. So, school finance. School finance is an interesting monster. I would say it's taken me quite a few years, and I still don't understand all of it as they change the rules frequently. Essentially, we have 4 key funding buckets that we get to budget each year. I have the education fund, the debt service fund, the operations fund, and a referendum fund. Those are the 4 main buckets. We have a lot of other funds, but we don't have to submit budgets for all of those, because they're pretty much, it's kind of like your bank account. You get so much in, I can spend that, and that's it, it's over. These are a little bit different in how the state provides money, and so we have to prove how we're going to spend that money. And so these all get funded. So the education fund is pretty much everything that is education related. You would think classrooms. So all of the different types of spending within the schools. Now, to fund those, that fund is funded by the state fund. So basically, you get those from your income tax. When you pay income tax, that's a big prime thing for that. And then we get a few little local funds that come into this, and we'll get in depth on every one of these. The debt service fund is funded by property taxes and a little bit of excise tax. So like when you go to a license branch and you're paying a little bit of vehicle taxes and things like that, some of those funds go in there. But primarily, that is property tax. The operations fund is property taxes with some other funds. So we have a little bit of those excise taxes, and the state's given us some leeway to move more excise taxes in there, which I thank the legislature for that. The safety grant that we apply for each year and get. Our before and after school program, which is our SAS, if you have kids involved in that, that funding runs through there. Those are basically kind of an in and out, like the money we get in goes to pay for all the fun things we do. And then there's a few other miscellaneous fees, plus a big one is a transfer from the education fund, and we'll discuss that too later. Then finally, that referendum fund. The referendum fund would also come from property taxes, but those would be approved via a referendum. We don't have one of those. We've never gone to the taxpayers asking for a referendum at this point. You'll find out later, it's still not my plan. That's not what I want to do. But that's how that piece would work. If you do that, through the process of the referendum and explaining everything to the public, we would lay out like what those funds would go to. And you would have to specifically adhere to that plan. So if you said, we're going to pay teachers more, then that money goes to that. You can't just be like, referendum, and then go do whatever you want with it. You don't get to do that. So there's a lot of checks and balances to make sure that doesn't happen. The Ed Fund. Here, the Ed Fund represents about 51% of our budget. And those revenues come from, one, state tuition funding. So in the budget every 2 years. When the state legislature is approving the budget, they set a base amount that they're funding every kid in the state of Indiana at. So it doesn't matter where they go to school, that's the base funding that every child you will receive funding for. After that, things get a little different. We also get some funding, and that's also determined by our enrollment of low-income and foster care students. So the fewer of those you have, the less you get. The more of those you have, the more you get. We also have state funding from additional enrollments. So for instance, like special education, also get into career and technical education, as well as our English language learners. So the one out of all of those that you really have a little control over is that CTE piece, because we could continue to try to push more of our students down those CTE paths. And the more kids that take those high-value CTE paths, the more the state is going to pay you for the kids completing those credits. So that is the one we get to control. The rest of them are pretty much, they're the kids we have in our school district. A couple other pieces on here. We do get a little bit of funding for summer school, even though that's reducing because summer school's slowly, I don't want to say going away, but it's becoming just more of a remediation piece, and not as many kids are just taking classes to get ahead anymore. We have Cubs preschool. So back in 2017, Mrs. Hollingsworth is in here, and she helped me start that together. We did this, 17 or 18 in there. We started a preschool. And so our enrollment for that goes in the education fund, because all those things run through there. And then somewhere in that ballpark again, we decided to start our own year-long driver's education program. So we are one of the only schools around. I think there's only like 3 or 4 in the state doing it, and we're one of them. And so the funding that comes in there to help support our kids in driver's education, that is a true in and out. The money that comes in goes right back out to the people who sit in the cars all the time with our 15-year-olds and teach them how to drive. And God bless you. Don't know if that's what I want to do all day, but I appreciate them. It's fantastic. And then a little bit of the interest we get too. So our investment things that we can do with schools is extremely limited. It all has to be guaranteed cash back. So I can't go put it in the stock market. So you're pretty limited on what you're able to do in those cases. So that interest we also run through our ed fund. If you're a pictorial learner and you like that better, hey, there's the pie graph to give you a little idea what that looks like. So 97% of our money comes from state tuition. So all those pieces I mentioned out in terms of like the base state tuition, our low income fees or money we get for that, career technical ed, special ed, English language, that drives almost all of the income we get. And you can see that the student services pieces, so Cubs, driver's ed, summer school make up 2%, interest is 1%, and I think it's awesome that the miscellaneous revenues end up 0 when you compare them, but it's a little something, and that always helps. We always like a little everything. The debt service fund is way more boring. The debt service fund is 26% of our budget, and those come strictly from property taxes and excise taxes. And as like I said, the state has given us some ability to move our excise taxes out, and they represent a lot smaller number. And so therefore excise may get moved to operations as we move forward just to help support that. But that is your debt service fund. So you're talking 94% property taxes and 6% excise. And I tried to put the numbers up there for last year so you can have some idea what that looks like. If you're like, how much money are they talking about? Because I was talking to somebody one day and they had no idea the actual size of the numbers that we deal with. So yeah, we get about $7.3 million this year in just the debt fund. The operations fund. The operations fund is tied to all the operations of the district. This one is about 23% of our budget, and these come from all over the place. Essentially, it's like we're trying to scrap and scrounge to fund this one, because this is the kind of the hardest one to fund. We get property taxes, local income taxes, the excise taxes, then our SAS, which is our after-school program. I don't understand why, but it's the rules of how budgeting works from the state, with the State Board of Accounts. I take the after-school program, and it has to go in the operations fund, but the preschool program can go in the education fund. I'll make the rules, I just follow. And that's how that piece has to work. Our Secure Schools grant, so we get a grant every year to cover about half the cost of our SROs. So we're extremely thankful for that, and for Deputy Jones and Deputy Lees that we have, and we really appreciate their service here to help our kids and help keep everybody safe. And then finally, a little bit comes from our rentals and some miscellaneous things. And then finally, the education fund transfer. So back in 2018, they changed the laws on how school funding worked. And we used to be able, some of the expenses that come out of the operations fund used to come out of what they called the general fund back then. When they changed it, they wanted to align and make it called the education fund and pretty much make sure all the education type expenses came from the education fund and the operational expenses came to operations. So you used to be able to pay some utilities out of the general fund. They moved all of that out. It goes to the operations. You used to be able to pay for central office out of that fund. Moved it all to operations. Custodians, operations. Maintenance, operations. So they moved a lot of different things over. However, at the time, they gave no extra funding mechanism. They're like, you got to pay all this out of there, and we aren't giving you any more money to do it. And so the one piece they did give us was they said, hey, we will let you transfer, and we'll let you transfer up to 15% of your education fund money to help offset some of those things that used to be paid out of that. So that would be our education fund transfer. That's the reason you do it, and it ends up being quite a hunk of money for us. So in our pie graph for this one, 20% of our operations funding comes from our education fund. Last year was 1.2973, which is about, if I remember right, on our total income, I want to say it was right around 7% of what we got out of the education funding went over. We try to hover around 10. I try never to get to 15, and we continually have been trying to reduce that every year. I was doing a good job for a while, and then as you'll see, things changed, and so I can't do a good job anymore on that piece. Just trying to keep our boat afloat. Property tax makes up about 60%, and you guys can read to see that the rest of them all kind of pare down. Now, one misconception that I hear all the time, and I want to try to, at least maybe hopefully in this room, put this to bed, is, why don't you pay the teachers more? You got property taxes. You can't do that. That's a Dave goes to jail. I'm not playing that game. I'd be done. So property taxes alone can feed your debt service, your operations, and your referendum. Now, we don't have a referendum fund, so we got nothing flowing in there. So for us, our property taxes go to that debt service and operations fund. Our education fund, that primary thing as you saw in the pie graph, is that state per pupil funding. So once again, try to come up with a little picture in case that helps folks understand. Property taxes go one way. Never the two should cross except in the transfer. That's it. And you can theoretically transfer from operations to education, but I don't know a single school district in the state of Indiana is doing that because you just don't get enough money in the operations side. Everybody goes the other way. But you can. Legally, that is allowed. So to the other side of the coin, talked about we brought money in, now the fun part, the money going out. So what are you allowed to spend it on? Because there's rules. There isn't just like free, do whatever you want. So on the education fund, those things I've said go to the classroom. Essentially, the bulk of them will go to salaries and benefits. So as you can see up there, the teachers, the counselors, the one group, when I read through it again, is that all the special education pieces go through that as well. So basically anything you can think of, it's working to teach children, actively teach children, runs through there. In addition to your principals, they go through there too. So the folks that are working in those capacities, they get their salary and benefits out of that side. Student education related costs. So we pay fees for our children to go to Area 31. And I'm trying to remember how many fees I pay. I want to say, well, $200,000 to $300,000 a year for our kids to get education over there in our CTE classes. So those career tech ed classes. Sorry if I use too many acronyms. I know that gets annoying for teachers. We do this all the time. Career and technical education courses. So welding, machining, we have nursing. There's so many different opportunities at Area 31. And so we pay them because we have to staff teachers over there. And that program works at Ben Davis right now with some openings in Brownsburg between, they have different offerings there. Just on a side note, as superintendents, we're all evaluating this program. We want to expand it. Our problem is we got nowhere to put the expansion. So eventually, hopefully someday, especially for the younger kids, maybe we'll have that expanded if that's something you're interested in more so, but we're working on that part. The driver's ed teachers, as we said earlier, classroom-related technology, holy cow, that stuff costs a lot of money. So for the kids to have computers, for the teachers to have projectors, and the stuff that you don't even think about, like the filters on everything to make sure nobody's going where they're not supposed to be in the internet. All the firewalls so we can keep everybody out of our internet. All those types of things. Security, all of that's got to run through there. And then classroom supplies, textbooks, and curricular things, those costs also come out of there. And then finally, you got that last piece about that operations fund transfer. That's the other piece we can take out of there. So for us, last year, 86% of our education fund revenues went to teachers and salaries. So, salaries and benefits for all those folks. So 86% of our money went that direction, which clearly is the bulk. 6% covered a lot of those student service costs and what that looks like. And then finally, that last 8% is that operations fund transfer. And that's all the money. So you can see those numbers associated up there. So we're spending over $13 million on salary and benefits for folks. And then the 892 and the 1.2. Debt fund. The debt fund is used purely to pay our bonds. To put it more in layman's terms, or paying our mortgage. So we built stuff around here, we borrowed money, we got to pay it back. And so that's what the debt fund is solely used for. Those things we've taken out come out in the forms of lease rental bonds and general obligation bonds. Lease rental bonds, and I believe I get into that in a second. Lease rental bonds are basically built on a building, so it's like a building improvement. And then a general obligation bond has a little bit more freedom, so like I can buy technology if I can't pay for it out of the education fund. Or if we need a vehicle because a truck went down and we don't have a truck anymore, we can do that through there. I can also buy buses if we need to. So we can do all kinds of different, less regulations in terms of like it's not tied to a building. That's what a general obligation bond does. Our debt payments are right here. That's all of them. If we get to 2039, we owe nobody anything unless we take out more money. And realistically, I'm just going to tell you, we're going to take out more money at some point. It's just how it works. In 2025, 7 something. I can't remember exactly, I think. I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure it was. So 26, it jumped up. It's 8 point something. I'll explain why in a little bit. Then we keep coming down. And you can see we have a massive cliff, as we call it, in 2031. So as that comes down, the tax rate comes down. However, it's honestly just not great planning on the school's part to let that thing go to zero and let everybody's property taxes bottom out and then all of a sudden come back and be like, oh, hey, I got to go get $3 million to fix something, so now I'm going to start charging you more. What needs to happen is there needs to be a regulation on how that works, and you just don't yo-yo things. I also don't believe in filling it up and just continuing to fill it and just charging people just to do anything. But there's got to be some sort of status on what that looks like. Expenditures from the operations fund. So these are things that they would say are not directly involved in classroom instruction. So this would be like, once again, our SAS, custodial maintenance, all of our bus drivers, the board, all central office salary, and benefits, all us folks that aren't education related, thanks state, we come from here. Then all of our repairs, so when we're fixing stuff and things are breaking, all that money comes out of here. Transportation related expenses, so if we have to fix buses, if I got to buy fuel, which we got to buy fuel, all those types of things come from this fund. Utilities, our insurance, legal expenses, so we have lawyers on retainer because you may not believe this, but we deal with something almost weekly. So we've got them on retainer to contact constantly to be like, hey, where are we on this? And then finally, different corporation supplies. So there's just stuff you got to get for the corporation every once in a while, and those are also a piece of that. This pie is way more chopped up. And our salary and benefits on this side only comprise about 37%, as you can see. Transportation's number 2 at 19%, because it costs quite a bit of money to get kids to and from school, especially in a district as large as ours. We got a lot of roads and a lot of miles our buses are traveling, so it costs money. We have our utilities at 15%, and legal insurance is 10, and as you guys can see, technology on that side, which is more along the lines of security stuff. So you're talking like cameras, all the fun things that go into that, and then some other district technology pieces, they have to come out of here too. So now we're through that piece. Whew, should be better, because I feel like that was a lot of numbers, a lot of info. So I want to address a couple questions that I get asked, and I present this to the teachers. And one of the questions that they always ask too is like, so why are we the lowest paid? We are the lowest paid in the county. Across the board, pretty much, we're the lowest paid in the county. And people are like, that doesn't seem right. Why do we get less money? I thought everybody got the same amount of money. If you remember back, there's varying amounts of money for like low income, CTE, special ed, all those things changes the amount you get. So every 2 years, a group called the LSA, which is the Legislative Services Agency, when the state is working through their budget, they provide projections when they start determining how much the kids are going to, like what we're going to get per kid. And so they put these out for us to be like, hey, you guys could look at when we do this run, and these are the laws we're putting in place, it's going to look like about this much. And if they change it, they'll run another one so we can kind of get an idea. So I use that as my piece to look at this, because it's the only one that I know that kind of compares apples to apples based on what they're doing. I don't necessarily know exactly what Brownsburg, Avon, Danville, Plainfield, Mill Creek are getting per kid. I do know what Northwest Hendricks is getting. And I will tell you that it's awful close to 81-21. I think it's off by like $50. So that gives me a little bit of like, okay, maybe this is close. So looking at those, I put together this little experiment. And I said, hey, if I took our student enrollment, so in 2024-25, we had 1,894 children when we started the school year. At Northwest Hendricks, we got $7,759 per kid. Using those LSA projections, these are what the other schools got. And if you were to take this 1,894 times that, that's how much more money they get for that number of children. And that's how much more they get if they had this number of kids. I know they have more kids or they have less kids, but I'm just trying to compare apples to apples. So essentially, for the same population of students, this is what every other school district in our county would be getting. This is what this year's kind of looked like. And if you notice, one key piece of this is our enrollment dropped. We are going down. We are not increasing in size. Every year my kindergarten classes tend to be smaller than my senior classes. We don't lose many kids in the middle, but we're just not bringing in as many children as we have going out. So if people are telling you we're growing exponentially, that's not the case. We are slowly declining, little by little. I was told by our demographer a while back, he said it should level out in a few years, but it's just going to be, that's going to be the new normal. We used to have about 150 kids a class, now we're at about 120 kids a class. So that's just where we're sitting right now. But for folks that are asking, why are we the lowest paid? We have less money to pay everybody. Now granted, they get more money because they have more needs. But I'm not sure how that works out. I don't live in those districts. I don't pay those things. I don't see those bills. But a number like that seems to be an awful lot for more money for, I don't know, what they get. But like I said, I don't know those decisions and what they get. I'm just presenting the information to say they get approximately a lot more money than we do. So if their teachers are paid a bunch more, they actually have a bigger kitty of money to play from than we do. And there's nothing we can do about that except try to increase our CTE courses. And we're working on it. Next question I hear a lot is, you got all this debt. What are you doing with that debt? So I thought I would say, hey, here's what we got with this debt. So currently right now we have 5 debt issuances that we are paying off. 2 of them will be done this year. Matter of fact, when I get to June, 2015 is gone. 2015 was a lease rental. It was taken out to build the middle school, and it's been refinanced once or twice, and then it will be done. And so we will finally have the middle school paid off. The 2019 GO will be paid off this year as well. That was something we took out in 2019. It's a GO bond, so it didn't have to be tied to a building. And this is where we actually paid to get the entire district rekeyed. Anybody who was around at that point, keys were running around like crazy, and people were entering our buildings whenever they felt like, just because they pass keys down forever. And so that's a security problem. And so we got the entire district rekeyed, and we're trying to hold a better grip on those. To all those who are asking me for keys, and you're like, why don't you give me a key? That's why. I don't want everybody running around the district getting into wherever they want. We also put security cameras in. So we have somewhere around 300 security cameras across our buildings, so we can see what's going on. So that's been helpful as well. At the same time, so there was money in there, so the admin office got a redo. If you notice, the boardroom's way bigger. We had to have a bigger boardroom because the fire marshal was stopping us at 30 people from attending a board meeting. And so we really needed to increase the size of that. And at the same point, this was done while the 2020 was being planned, and we knew that the maintenance building was going to be moved off the campus here. So we had to come up with a plan. So that's when we put the maintenance building beside the admin building there in Lizton. And we had to build that out a little bit bigger, so that's where that money went to. The 2021 is the big one. That won't be paid off till 2039, so that's the one. Generally, these things run 20 years in length. This is the one that, first of all, for those who remember, Pittsburgh Elementary School, if you remember back in the day, when you walked in the front door, you walked way down the hall before you get to the office. That's a security concern, especially in this modern times. Same thing in North Salem. You come in and you kind of had free reign in the building before you got to the office. And the middle school did not have a vestibule. You could get in the front door and you had free reign in the building. So one of the first things we did with that money was secure all those again. So that caused us to redo a whole bunch of front entrances and pile quite a few $1 million into redesigning and rebuilding all those. The other piece that comes with that was the redesign of this campus. So I will never forget sitting and watching film from a kid, and those who remember this, we had one parking lot back here, and the buses were in there, and the kids were in there. And it was release time. And I saw kids darting in and out of buses to get to their cars. And we sat there looking at this, and we're like, how has somebody never been severely injured? Like, it's a ticking time bomb. Somebody's going to get hurt bad. And that was like, okay, we have got to redesign this campus. I know a lot of people are like, you did the football field. I will tell you, the football field was a byproduct of that video, because we said we have got to redesign what this place looks like. So then when you started putting roads and moving roads, it became, okay, the roads got to go over here, so we got to move the football field partially to readjust everything. And then it all just started snowballing from there in terms of what that looks like. So that was the main driver for that piece, and it also worked out great because I feel like we have a very nice campus now in terms of safety-wise. We're able to separate our buses from our children. So like the students all come in and park down there. The buses are at the middle school. They're in the lot that's up there. And so we're able to separate groups. And it's added to the safety immensely, that we don't really have any accidents in those ways, and that's fantastic. 2025 GO, we just got. So when we asked what the debt payment was last year, it was around 7, and this year it's at 8. This is the reason. We had to start a transportation department this year. So by doing that, we had to go buy buses. And luckily, Edwards Transportation was great to work with, and they sold us their fleet. So it was fantastic. I'm thankful for that. Thank you very much. That was great. So I had to put buses in a situation, and I had to hire bus drivers, and we had to get a whole transportation department put together. And that cost money, and it cost quite a little bit of money. So we took out a $3 million bond, and we're there. Now, in addition to that, I've been able to buy student computers, because those were all on their last legs as well. And since the state of Indiana mandates we test everybody, we got to have computers to test the kids on. And so we have to continually update those, because for some reason computer companies are smart and they make those things expire like every 4 years. It's really annoying. Finally, the last one was we just did a refinance of it was called the 2016A at the point, which was a refinance. Essentially, that was the bond that was taken out to build the Pittsburgh primary school and the additions on this building, which would be this auditorium, the aux gym. I know we redid my science classroom when I was a science teacher down there, and we worked HVAC and stuff like that. So that all happened, and that was like 8, 9, 10 in that ballpark when we did all that work. And so those were refinanced, and we saved, it wasn't as much as I had hoped at the time, but we saved about $250,000 overall in what we will pay out. So that helps. It's something. So we were able to refinance those, and those will be paid off in 2030. Circuit breaker. So I'm going to try to attempt a small explanation of this. How am I doing on time? Oh, not too bad. because this is something that affects us a lot. So circuit breaker was something that the legislator put into the Constitution in 2008. It wasn't just a law. They had a vote, and everybody voted to put it in the Constitution. So it's there. Essentially, it is a way to regulate our property taxes. So it's in there to say your property taxes are capped. If you live in your house as your primary residence, that you're a 1% max property tax. If you have a residential property, so if you're renting it out or you have a second home, it's a long-term care facility, or anybody with land, like for agricultural purposes, that's taxed at 2%, and then basically industrial, non-residential type things are at 3% on personal property. That was before what just occurred a year ago. We'll get to that. So in calculating all these things, these limit the amount of money you have to pay. It's fantastic as a taxpayer. I like it. Like, my taxes are limited at home. That's great. I appreciate that. Then every day I come to work and I'm like, daggone it. They're limited. I can't do as much. I'm not going to get as much money. So I get to live both sides, which is exciting. But it also helps me to realize, okay, make sure you keep that in mind, because you just can't go and do all the taxing you want. The key here is that these property tax caps, so the amount of money we theoretically lose, all has to come out of the operations fund. The debt fund's what they call a protected fund. This makes total sense. I have to collect enough money to pay my mortgage. Not allowed. If we default, that's a bad, bad, bad thing. Creditors can't come in and like take the school away from us. And besides that, the state has laws, and that doesn't happen. So when we get our property taxes, number one, they all go into the debt fund, because we've got to be able to pay the mortgage. The leftover gets to go to the operations fund. So how do you know how much you're going to lose? And I'll take you through a little thing here in a second. Actually, I'll do it right here. So we had our max levy for our operations fund last year was set at $4,879,000. I budget these every year in the summer. So for instance, I will start working on the school's budget coming up June, July, and we'll go to the board for approval. And it's always aimed high, because you can never go back up, but you can come back down. So if you ever see those things and people are like, why is the tax rate so high? I promise you it will never be as high as what we advertise, because we have to have leeway to figure out what they're going to do. But the exciting part is I have to budget with a bunch of guesses. I have no clue exactly what that number is going to be. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to budget, say, the operations side, and be like, I don't know if I'm going to be out 500,000, a million, 1.2 million. I don't know that. And I don't know it until April. They haven't released it yet, but it's sure to come out here pretty soon on how much we're actually going to lose in a tax cap. So I'm guaranteed to lose that every year. I just don't know. For last year, our tax cap loss was $707,000. So theoretically, we would have gotten $4.1 million if all property taxes were paid. Not getting into that tonight, but that is a piece that also comes into play when you're doing this. That you don't always, I've never seen all that. I'll just put it that way. We never get it all. So how can you fight this? Like, what can you do? The only way to do this, and to try to increase the amount of money we get by lowering the tax caps, is to lower the tax rate. It sounds crazy in your mind, but I've done the math, it works. But if I lower the rate, we actually get more money. And it's wild. But you don't necessarily pay more. So it's kind of crazy, but that's one of the goals, which is a good thing for everybody, to try to lower the tax rate, which is one of my goals. So recent legislation that happened that's affected this district. So back in 2023, passed House Rule Act 1454. And that said that we would no longer be able to have a waiver for the tax caps if we took out more debt. And that was to start after July 1 of 24, I believe was the date. So what they used to do is said, hey, if you lose over 10% in property tax loss, that cap loss, you can actually transfer part of your debt fund over and help offset that. It was a fraction of it. They let you move a fraction of that money, but you got a little something. And for us, it ranged from anywhere between like 400,000 down to 70,000, depending upon the year and how much tax cap we were losing. Well, they decided in 2023 to start in 24 that if you take out money, you don't get to do that anymore. So I fought that as long as I possibly could. And we didn't take out money for a year to try to make sure I could keep the tax cap transfer working. But last year, we had to take out money, so we no longer get that piece. And for us right now, it's about $160,000 a year. It would not raise your taxes one iota because we're allowed to tax a little bit more in debt. Once again, going back to make sure everybody pays their property taxes, because there couldn't be anything worse than me getting those bond payments ready to go and I don't have enough money because everybody didn't pay their taxes. But there's always leftover. And so when you look at that leftover, you could move that. And the next year you'd start over again. So you're allowed to do that part, but we can't anymore because we took out bonds. Then $14.99, same year, and this is the one that hammered us. It put a hard cap on our growth at 4%. It's something called the maximum levy growth quotient. You could think of it as a COLA, a cost of living increase, that schools get every year. Generally, it operates between 3 and 6, and there's a mathematical formula that determines what that thing is. The legislature came back and said, hey, we're going to stop it at 4. So that way, people aren't raising too many taxes. There was a piece in there that was also a 3-year appeal, that what they would do would be a 3-year look back at how much assessed valuation you received. And if it fell that your area received a very high amount of assessed valuation growth, you could appeal what your 4% theoretically would be and get additional. We fell into that boat. And we fell into that boat because Steel Dynamics was released from their TIF in 2022. I thank the county and Steel Dynamics very much, because essentially what that meant was the TIF that they had on and the tax dollars Steel Dynamics was paying was going to the county to help them pay for the infrastructure, everything they put in. They still pay taxes. When you hear TIF, those companies are not paying taxes. They're paying taxes. It's just going to a different entity, usually the one that helped build the infrastructure to help get them off the ground. And a lot of times what will happen is when that comes up, they kind of decide we'll do some new improvements and we'll re-TIF. TIFs are generally 20-year deals. The county and Steel Dynamics both agreed didn't need to do any more infrastructure, we're good to go. School Corporation and other taxing entities like Town of Pittsboro, Middle Township, you get all that AV. It was a 25% increase in our AV. We went from like 600,000 to 800 and some thousand, which is a ridiculous amount of money. And that was all coming on for us. And so we had a 20-some%, like a 20 increase in our AV. So if we'd have been allowed to do our growth appeal, we would have qualified. And essentially, what would have happened was Steel Dynamics would have paid the entire thing because all their taxes would have come and we'd have divvied that out, and all the increase would have basically come from them. So taxpayers themselves wouldn't have seen anything themselves. It would have been from them. But legislature said, nope, can't do that anymore. So we punted that. We don't get that. The fun part about MLGQ is it's one of those deals where like it's a compounding situation. So if I got an extra 200,000 this year, then next year I'm automatically set at that level now. And then if I get another 200,000 on top of that, then I'm automatically set. So it just kind of, it's a compounding thing. So it continues to grow every year. So a year you don't get it, you lost forever, which doesn't help a lot. So in this case, that stopped. We essentially lost the ability to build over 1.1 million and just keep building on that. They put in place some supplemental deduction caps. So that was a piece that I can't evaluate, honestly, and give you a number for what we're getting or not getting, because there's so many other pieces in play. There's like 4 other variables I'd have to try to guess, and one knocks the other, and it's all over the place. But they basically put in caps, which is what they actually permanently put in SEA 1. And then finally, they had a cap now on debt rates that if you were over 80 cents for your debt rate, you can't take out any more debt without a referendum. And for us, we were tinkering at $1.11, I believe it was. And when that came out, Dr. Syverson and myself and the board, we all got together and talked, and we're like, we can't do this. We got to be able to buy things. And I'm not going to referendum to need computers. So for those who remember, we stopped our entire project. We had a $70 million project theoretically going to happen with a new pool. We were going to update the high school, all those things. Stop, done, over. And the main reason was because we can't do anything else if we did that, because our tax rate for the next 20 years would be over 80 cents. So that was all stopped. So that's what happened on that piece. This is a lot of information. This all came from Policy Analytics. So we partner with a firm called Policy Analytics. They run property tax projections down to the parcel. So they look at each individual property, and they can go through and figure out what the property tax impact is going to be whenever they pass a law. So we use them because otherwise you really are throwing darts and have no idea what the effect is going to be. And I can't live in a world where I can't somewhat have an idea of what that effect's going to be because it's just way too important on what we're doing. These are all the SCA1 changes, and I know Brownsburg's done some presentations, other districts done some presentations, and I know people have heard this SCA1 piece. So I'm going to try to break these down for you a little by little. The big ones for us are the top three. The bottom ones are going to come basically in my first slide in terms of there's more exemptions for personal properties. They're changing how they're doing the farmland, and they did eliminate some deductions for some folks. But the top three are the biggies that are going to affect us more so. Now, one concept I want to try to make sure everybody gets, and this has to do with the business personal property more so, that those personal properties can be depreciated. So essentially, folks are going to see an assessed valuation drop. I'm not saying you're seeing it at your house, just to let you know. Your property may not drop an assessed valuation because the assessor has to assess that based on 3 or 5 year growth of what the community looks like, and it's in law. I'm not saying anybody's assessed value necessarily is going to go down at their house. I'm just saying overall for our school district, it is going to drop because these business personal property pieces are coming into play. So everybody in here, I 100% believe will figure out that, so if our assessed value was $2.8 billion and we had a tax rate of 90 cents, there's your revenue. If your assessed valuation goes up, then your tax rate can go down to get the same amount of money. Kind of makes sense. One goes up, the other one goes down, I get the same math answer. If assessed valuation goes up and you don't change it, you get more money. SCA1 is going to drive us to the last piece. This is what's going to happen. The assessed valuations are going to drop. If I want the same amount of money, I've got to raise this. And as I told you when it came to the debt fund, I can't do anything about those. Those are out there. Money's there. We got to pay the bills. And so I know some people I've heard say, my tax rate went up. I'm like, yeah, it did, because I have a set amount of money I have to pay. And so I'm going to have to raise it if we actually have a lower assessed value. And this year it wasn't necessarily lower, but it's coming. Because this year's assessed valuation for the school corporation was at 0.2. Here's back that 24% when Steel Dynamics came on. These corrections, I'm told, are because the market didn't keep up with property valuations. And so when you ask people, the assessor, that's why everybody's assessed value started skyrocketing, is because they had not, I guess, properly done it. I'm not sure how that worked, but they said basically everybody's property wasn't keeping up with what the market value was. And so they had to reassess everybody, and they did it multiple years, and I know my house went up a ton. That's how it went. Well, looking in the future, ours is going to decrease for the next 5 years. So our assessed valuation for the school corporation is going to drop. So tax rates may go up. We're going to try really hard not to take out much money, but I can tell you there is a little bit of things we're going to have to look at. But for the most part, to try to keep this number as low as I can, I'm going to have to manipulate what do I need in this boat. And we're going to start living on what I would call, do you really need it? And if you don't really need it, then we aren't doing it yet. Until we can get down to that curve or that cliff that we saw in the debt payments where I got a little bit more room and everybody could still see some relief, yet we could still maintain and do some of the things we have to do. Eventually, the fun part is, you get to 2032, we're going to start seeing these grow up again. And that's because all the initial dropping you down, they set a new baseline essentially. And everybody's going to start to see everything creep back up. Sorry to be bad news, but I'm telling you, it's coming back. So we'll see what everybody does downtown when that happens. Other pieces that go into this is some of those personal property tax deductions. I got to hustle. They changed the law on how everything gets deducted. If you look at the back of your property tax, when that thing came, and I'm guessing everybody got theirs, the whole formula, all the information's back there, and they show you how these deductions work. So what they're really trying to do is eliminate the standard deduction and put in the supplemental deduction. So the supplemental deduction will increase, the standard deduction will decrease, and what this really does for you is give you a deduction that's more in line to what your property value is, and not just a standard number that's across the board that everybody's getting the same thing. So they're trying to align it more along those lines, and that's that piece. This essentially will probably mean a little bit less money for us, but we'll see how that shakes out. The other one they put in place are these homestead credits. And with the homestead credits, this is either 10% of your tax liability or $300. This is done after the caps are taken out. They take this money out, but it's based on your original assessed value. So if your home is valued at $200,000, you'll get a $200 deduction. If your home is valued at $300,000, you get a $300 deduction. If your home is valued at $500,000, you'll get a $300 deduction because 300 is the cap. But if you're below the $300,000 threshold, then it's only 10%. So you may not see that 300. It just depends on where your property and your home is valued at. And then they threw in a few extra credits because they said the other ones, they're taking out some of the deductions and they're putting in credits. And then here's these credits of different types they're putting in for folks based on different things that apply. So what does that look like for us? Well, when they started taking out that money, we had Policy Analytics help us. And these two top little bars are what those homestead credits mean to us in terms of reduced revenue. And the bottom bar is our property tax cap. So I already knew we were going to be in the ballpark. I was actually elated it was at that number. But the fun part becomes now I got to find an extra $600,000 that we're not going to get because of the 300, 200, whatever that may be for everybody. So that's how that's going to play out, they feel like, in the district. We're not 100% sure what that number is going to be because the expert said, you're going to have to get to December, Dave, and we'll look and see what actually happened to us because nobody's for sure what that piece is going to look like. But that's what it looks like for us. The other piece that goes in, the 2%. So for those who have agricultural land or second homes or rental properties, anything that fits in that boat, they're applying another additional deduction for those people. And this all plays into after you get the other pieces taken off, you get more deductions. So we're just trying to lower what everybody's paying. So what does that mean to us? So because our assessed valuation is going to drop, and if we've got to take out more bonds, I'm trying hard not to. But it's eventually going to raise your tax rate, and it's going to go up, just to let you know. Just going to be honest with you. I will tell you, I'm not planning on taking out anything that we don't need. We're not going to be all spiffy. There's no gold toilets here at Tri-West, except for the ones the kids may paint. Like, it's going to be, what do we need? And we're going to try to live on our needs. The supplemental homestead credits, we'll see what that comes out, but that's $600,000 after this year. This year the legislature was kind, let us split it over the debt fund and the operations fund, but next year they said everybody's taking it all out of operations. So, okay, we'll work on that. The other piece that went into this, that wasn't on any of the others, is the legislature determined that in supposed to be 2028, all schools would lose their local income tax. So our county is one that assesses a local income tax. For West Hendricks School Corporation, this year it's a little over $500,000 that I get in revenue to put in there. The legislature said no more. It's going to the county. The county will get that money. You're still paying it, but the county's going to get the money. So just to know, this isn't like you wouldn't pay it anymore. It's going to them, and they get to decide what they want to do with it. That was supposed to end in 2028. This past year, and this plays into like everybody in terms of fire, police, and us. We're all like sitting here going, are you kidding me? We're all taking a hit. The legislature, after enough of us squawked, I think, and started proving what our numbers would look like and the fact that we were all going to be bankrupt in 2 years, made a change this year and extended it for 1 year. And what I'm told is they are going to again go back and evaluate what they did in SEA 1. So they're going to look like, okay, what did we do really here and how is that really affecting people? And look to possibly make some more adjustments to that. But we'll see what happens with that. I'm thankful, very thankful that they gave us another year. So that at least helps us a little bit more as we try to get down the road and try to get there. So, what have we done in the school corporation? Because if I ever have to come to the community and ask for a referendum, you can betcha I'm going to do everything I can to bleed ourselves as dry as I can get us. Like, if I come and ask, I need it. And so what have we done here? Well, you kind of get two choices. You either got to increase your revenues or you got to decrease your expenditures. There's not a whole lot of other ways around this. Because I'm not selling products, so I can't make more. We're making kids, and we're trying to help them become good humans and get ready for their lives. So I can't increase that piece. So what can we do? In 2025, you'll see our expenditures outpaced our revenues by about, what is that, $430,000. I don't like that. We're on the wrong side, and so we got to do some work to fix that. So, things we've done. This isn't what we've done the last year necessarily, but things that we've done since I've been over here is, one, we started Cubs Preschool. Now, as I said, a lot of that money's just in and out. So, like, we pay for the program. We pay for our teachers. We pay for supplies for them, and it's kind of in and out of money. But that is a major investment, in our opinion, because we're getting 60 to 70 cute little faces in our door every year and getting them hopefully hooked on Northwest Hendricks School Corporation, and so that they want to continue to come here. Because one of the other biggest pieces we're dealing with these days is you can take your kids anywhere. And we're trying to show that, hey, we offer a great product, it's a great school, and we want your kids to be here because we can do great things for them. And so getting them in when they're little and trying to help them learn this is the way it is here at Northwest Hendricks, I feel like it's a great marketing piece. And so far, I don't know we've lost very many of our children that have attended Cubs. It's been a good presentation or a good thing for them. SAS is our after-school program. That one we do make a little bit of money on. By law, we have to offer an after-school program. And so years ago, we had that farmed out and we were paying some money. And so when I found out one day in a meeting how much money the company we were paying out to was making, I was like, no more. We're taking this over. We're going to figure this out. It was substantial. So we've taken this program over. The other piece I like about this is, one, is our own people. So we can kind of regulate things. I don't have to go and talk to like the YMCA to figure out what to do with somebody. Like, we can regulate things, which is great. We're able to provide programming because, like, kids do homework after school. Kids are involved in other things. So I think that's fantastic that it's just not like free runaround time. And we're able to invest back in people that live in our community. I think that's huge. We've got a lot of people work here, and I think that's really big. Not to mention, it's opportunity for our kids, because a lot of our kids actually work as counselors there after school. And so that gives them an opportunity, especially kids who are thinking about, someday I want to be a teacher, to get a little bit of that taste of, like, this is what it's like working with kids every day. We run our own driver education program. That one I just feel is massive. That brings in somewhere between 100 and, let me think about that for a second. I think it was $140,000 last year, which shocks everybody when I say the number. That is an in and out, and that is huge because our teachers drive those cars with those kids, so it's helping our teachers get more money. And I love that idea because I'd like to pay our people. So I think that's fantastic. Plus, it offers that service. Luckily, I got to have my son just participate last summer, and I thank them because it was really nice. They either I dropped him off here, and there was a time or two where they dropped him off at my door. Like, that's fantastic, because I know some of the outside services aren't like that. You got to drive way over, and then you got to drop your kid off, and you got to go get them again. And so just having that local piece is really nice. I also want to say it's not all of our kids doing it, because thank you to Danville, thank you to Western Boone, thank you to Lebanon. We have a whole lot of kids in their districts also participating in our driver's ed program. So that's nice. We're bringing in money from them too. Corporate partnerships, multiple corporate partnerships we work with. We thank them all for their support. We really appreciate it, but that money comes in to help try to offset some of these things. And then grants. We're working really hard. School board's been fantastic in helping support this and helping find people to do these things. And we're working on getting in more money through grants to try to offset some more of our expenses that way. So the other side of it would be decreasing expenditures. So since I took over in July, I had some fun decisions to make before I took over, because we were losing a lot of people who were retiring. And so looking at the finances and everything else and seeing what was going to happen, I was like, there's some changes that got to be made. And so I determined that I was not going to rehire the curriculum director position. We had 2 academic coaches leave, and my last academic coach is now going to be the proud principal of Pittsboro Primary School, approved by the board tonight. And then we had an aide and some teachers leave. So I've got to find a way to cut some costs. And so we've eliminated those positions. And by doing that, I'm saving about $600,000. On the flip side, on the operations side, when I became the superintendent and looking at all that, I was like, looking at that funding and seeing how much we're going to lose, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't put people back in those spots. So I essentially cut my old position. And then the office administrative assistant had always been kind of sitting out there. We had one, we didn't have one, we had one, we didn't have one. And basically I'm like, no, it's over, it's gone. So we're not hiring that one. And then our HR director, Mr. Fry, left in December to become the principal of Attica High School. And rather than hire a new HR director, we went back and hired a deputy treasurer. Combine all those savings, and we're talking around $322,000. And then there's been reductions in programming a little bit. Primarily this year, it's been more PD offerings. We've done so much training with our teachers. I'm a huge believer in you just can't keep training people all the time. You gotta let them learn it. You just can't give them new. So this year we put a pause on any PD basically and let people kind of just learn and try to get better at what they're doing. So that saved us about 50 grand, which was awesome. And then some other reductions in spending. We're just seeing some natural transitions as we have the transportation piece move over. We got a few other things that we've cut that we're seeing about a $500,000 saved there. So thus far, we've saved close to 1.5 million. So that's a nice hunk. Now, in doing that, just to tell you, at this time last year, I was pretty sure we were going to have to do a referendum. I can stand before you right now, and if they don't change anything downtown in the next legislative session, drastically bad, we can do this for a couple more years. So we'll be able to hold it together and keep going, which is huge. I'm very appreciative that we got to that point. But like I said, that's dependent upon what happens downtown. And if they cut more, we're about to the end of all I can take on cuts without coming to ask for more help. One other piece to put in here is we have been actively trying to reduce tax rates. Because I know some people were like, you keep raising my taxes. I'm like, not so much. We've been dropping them. And so even this year, when it's at $1.19, it's still 6 cents cheaper than it was 2 years ago. Now, I know the assessed valuations go up, so that counters it. I get some people may pay more. Like I said, I have no control over how they assess your property. That's nothing I can do about. I can control this piece. The board and myself get to determine what these things look like. And so we will continue to try to make those things go down. So what is our future thinking? One, we're going to strategically monitor everything to try to monitor that tax rate, to try to decrease our property tax cap credits, like make sure we're getting more money on that front, and be very mindful of what we're doing to tax rates for folks. I say agile and reactive with our finances. I say that because, as I told you, our population is decreasing. And so we're being very proactive in terms of do I really need a teacher in that grade? Do we need to move teachers? Thus far, I'm very thankful for this. I'm not riffing anybody. I went to every staff, I've talked to them, high school, I'm coming to you tomorrow if you're in here. There's no plans to cut a teacher in this district. We've got some people leaving, and so we're able to maneuver that piece. But we are going to be paying attention to the fact that I've got 80 kids in a kindergarten class at Pittsboro. What does that mean for the number of teachers I have? And as those children matriculate up, next year we'll have 70 in second grade. So at some point, I don't need 5 teachers anymore in a grade level. So we've got to try to figure that out. And we've been trying to play the game of, hey, would you like to teach third grade now? And, but I really, really, really don't want to have to take anybody's job. And we're going to try not to do that. We're going to try to continue to maneuver those things through. So if anybody tells you they're cutting all the teachers, not happening. Next year, I'm running with what I got. We're good. So please don't believe when you hear those things. That is not happening. And that's why I say agile and reactive, because we just got to pay attention to what that thing looks like. And then we've got to make those moves to try to adjust so we never have to get in that type of boat. One stinky part of all this, I used to have a plan for this school district through 2040. And I was like, this is awesome. I had it all planned out. You could know exactly what you're doing. And you could really forward plan on things you wanted to get done. That's gone. I hope I can plan for 2 years and see what's going to happen next. So it does make it hard when people are like, how can you not know what's going to happen? Well, when they're changing all the things all the time, I view it as it's like starting to play the game of Monopoly, and then all of a sudden they change everything. And Park Place isn't one of the most expensive properties, and you're like, they change it all. And you're like, what happened? that's the game we get to play. And so as long as we don't get any worse legal requirements from various legislation, we'll be in good shape. But the other piece I will say with this is we're not rich. So don't expect big fancy things coming down the pipe. Like, we're going to try to make ends meet and make things happen and educate kids and focus on the things we talked about earlier, but it ain't going to be with gold toilets and things like that. Last piece, this is my little secret part. Where does this lead us to? This is a program I've been wanting to do for years, and now that I'm in this position, I get to do this program. I want involvement, and I want involvement from you if you want to be involved. We're going to start a program. It's going to be called Bruin Ambassadors. Other school corporations around the state have done things like this. And essentially, what we're looking for is, I won't call it a class, 15 to 20 people. We'll see if we get that many or what this looks like. You can't get too big because it's going to really inhibit what we kind of want to get going. And essentially is we're going to start by teaching you about school. So teaching you all about school. So we've got exciting plans of like, hey, one day you're going to come in and listen to me talk more about this stuff and try to give a little more deeper dive in a couple things. We'll explain like, what does the school board do? Why are they there? What is their purpose? Because I know a lot of people have ideas on what that looks like. What does a principal do every day? Well, what better idea than to go spend some time and watch the principal do things? What's involved in school lunch? School lunch stinks. I hate my lunch. Well, let's go to the cafeteria and you can see what those people go through every day. They work their rears off. It's hard. They're constantly taking temperatures. I mean, it's crazy. They are fantastic people that work so hard for your kids. So it always frustrates me when my kids came home and they're like, I don't like lunch. I'm like, well, you little stinker. But to work on that, and having even told our transportation director, I think we want to come and maybe ride a bus sometime. So we'll get to see some of these things. And just so you can get a real idea of like, what is school like? What's going on there? With that, then we'll take, after we get through, like I call it the coursework, and then really work on building a group of people to support the school. We need some vocal folks. I know some of you spend time on social media. It drives me bonkers, and you can ask any of the staff members here. One of my main things is, if you have a question, please ask me. Do not make things up. Don't listen to gossip. I will tell you the straightforward truth, I promise. And if I can't tell you the truth because it's a legal thing, I'll tell you that. But as long as I can tell you the truth, I'm going to tell you the truth. And we get a lot of things that fly around. I would love to have some folks that could go out and be that voice for the community, to be able to set people straight on those types of things. 2, I've always wanted a group of parents to be involved when we have families move into the district, transfer into the district, and you're always kind of like, what do I do? Like that there's people to contact, another parent, to say like, how does that work? How do I get my kids signed up for baseball? How does school drop-off work? And just have a whole team of people that people can reach out to and feel welcomed to be able to hopefully move this district in a very positive direction. So it's something I've been wanting to do for years. So if you are interested, there's a QR code to a Google form that you can apply. Like I said, we're going to keep it I got to figure out 15 to 20. I'm still trying to figure out logistics on what that's going to look like. If you can't get that on your phone, no problem. There's papers back there. I know Dr. Mitchell put them out. I'll thank you very much. So you can grab one of those. It's got the QR code on it and a little explanation. I'm hoping to start in July. So just so you know, that's the goal. We're looking at approximately 1 a month. It could flex. We'll look at schedules and see when people are involved and what people have going on. And initially, some of them will hopefully be in the evenings, so we're not interrupting with people's jobs. But I will say, there will be some opportunities where I'd love to get in the building so you can see what actually happens in a school. Because I will tell you, it's totally different than when I went to school. Kids are really up and doing things, and it's fantastic stuff. And so if you're like one of those like me and you had to sit in a certain row and you had to sit in the desk and then write like your spelling words 100 times and all that stuff doesn't happen anymore. So it's great to go see what that's like. I'm done. I want to thank you all for coming. Ah, 15 minutes over. I'm happy to answer questions. I can answer them one-on-one, or if anybody's got big group questions they want to know, I can try to do the best I can. Yes, sir.
I remember years ago, in this lottery,
I agree 100%. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think we get much of that lottery money. So I agree with you. And there's other things they may be coming with, I'm not sure, to try to help offset some of that, but yes, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Yes? So the thing I would say is, one, get educated in terms of like, just pay attention to what they're doing. It's hard. I will say, I get a lot of flyers. I am not going to say anything about any candidates, because I just want to present information, and I think everybody deserves their own right to make their decisions on what that's like, because other things affect everybody, and I get that. One is, make sure you know what they're talking about. Sometimes they put things out just to let you know. We've increased spending more than any time. Well, they've increased spending to education, but huge pieces are going to charter schools, which aren't our public schools. They go to universities, which they need money too. I understand how that part goes. But when they say these types of things, it's not necessarily all coming back for our kids, like in the public school, like here at West Hendricks. The other piece is, get out and vote. So once you make your educated choices, you know what I mean, and get out there and do that. This is a group, when I get Bruin ambassadors going, is somebody that eventually I want to team in to help maybe talk with folks. One time I was at a seminar, and they told me, they said, do you know how many people it takes for a legislator or a representative to actually kind of pay attention to you? And we were like, oh man, like 200 people or something? They said, 6. If they get like 6 phone calls on the same topic, it will perk them. And they'll send their, I can't remember what they're called, the little associates that do a lot of the work for them, but they'll get information, like they'll send people out to try to figure things out. So it honestly doesn't take a huge uprising of people as long as we have that coordinated effort. Anybody else? Thank you. I appreciate you being here, and hopefully have a great night. Thanks a lot.